hours going somewhere, out to eat or maybe driving to a show. And, and I'm just kind of shut down. I'm just kind of, doing the drive. And all of a sudden something hits her and she just turns and goes, "Honey, what are you thinking?" And how many of you guys know the answer? Shout it out to me. What are you thinking? Nothing. You think we're lying. I swear we're not lying. We can actually think of nothing. It's God's gift.
Hey everybody, welcome to Heaven Fun, where we talk about things of above and also have a great time doing it, which means we have a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me today. I've got a great friend of mine named Steve Geyer, who's my guest today. And let me tell you just a little bit about him. He has performed on Dry Bar Comedy. He's got a special on there. You can go check it out under Steve Geyer, Geyer. And he's gotten over 2 million hits from his show. And welcome my good friend, Mr. Steve Geyer. It is like a crazy pleasure to have you on here.
Well, it is a crazy pleasure to see your face. Look at you. I can see you.
I could just touch the hem of your garment. I would be made whole. We met at the Dove Awards in 89 or 90 or something like that. And we started a Christian comedy group there. And Steve and I, along with several other comedians, were performing. It was a lot of fun. And that's where we got to be buddies starting off. And of course, over the last 30 years or whatever, we've kind of kept up with each other, but had not been connected as much to each other until lately. And it's just so good to renew that connection because we have so much in common. Let me just tell you something about Steve, y'all, real quick, by way of introduction. This guy, I'm not kidding you. He is the most humble, caring, selfless person on the planet. You can read more about his statements on his website at stevegeyer.comedy.com.
Yeah, I wrote those myself because my publicist just couldn't get it. I was just like, "No, you're not capturing the essence of me." And
that's right.
Yeah, so I had to let them go. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Tell me about the time you worked in the nursery at church and who you worked with and what that meant to you.
Oh man, yeah, that was when Kathy and I were living in Nashville. Both our kids were born in Nashville, and we were part of Belmont Church, which was kind of the church where like most of the artists went. If you had children, you volunteered in the nursery instead of just, dumping your kids off and going to church. As part of your involvement, you volunteered, and so it was kind of fun, because when it was my turn to volunteer in the nursery, and Amy Grant's like, right there, and I'm like, "Hi, Amy," and but it was just a neat thing that everybody, Michael W. Smith went there, a lot of different artists, country artists, Marty Stewart, Ricky Skaggs went for a while, but it was just a nice, it was just a neat community because nobody acted like they were anybody other than another church member or a friend. And but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Tell me a little bit about your story because you wrote this incredible book called Shameless. And I'm telling you, I read it, I couldn't put it down. I got a copy for my daughter and son-in-law, and they've started reading it and love it.
Well, it was never intended to be a book. It was actually a blog. I was blogging, and my editor called me, actually texted me and said, "Hey, you're right at your deadline." And I said, I can't finish it. And she was like, "Well, how short are you?" And it's a 500-word blog, and I said, "Well, I'm not short, I'm long." And she said, "Well, how long are you?" I said, "Well, I'm at 20,000 words now." And she was like, "Holy mackerel." I sent it to her. A couple of days later, she got back in touch with me. She said, I would call you, but I can't talk without crying. And you have to write this book. And I said, "Well, it's not a book, it's a blog." She goes, "No, it's a book." And so I had never, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was all that important to me but it was just me kind of getting it off of my chest and me being able to put words to feelings. I always found it remarkable when someone could put words on my feelings, like if I was struggling with something and then they would attach a word to it and I'd go, oh, that's it. So that's really what all I was trying to do. And then,
That's great.
so the journey through the book was, it was my interactions with other people being authentically myself, and just being willing to be broken, and brokenness is, my friend Troy always tells me, brokenness is one of those things that you hate going through it. You hate the moment. You hate while it's going on. You're so grateful after you've been through it. And it's the first lesson you forget, which is true. You don't,
Mhm.
it's like brokenness doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't remain. It doesn't have that kind of staying power. And so when I book was really in a real broken state that was cumulative. And so I just put it in the book. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's how it all happened. Yep.
One of the things too, that I noticed, because you've been through this, I've been through it. We still have waves of it. It's just getting depressed
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes for no reason, it'll just kind of hit you.
Yep.
And I remember, when one of our catch up conversations, tell us about that real quick, when you and I kind of got connected on the phone and you were hesitant about, remember?
Yeah, well, because it's something that, we're not supposed to be, we're not supposed to, like, I still find it fascinating. I mean, you and I were never, we were never quote unquote famous, but we were fairly well known. I mean,
Mhm.
people, when you and I were touring, our names were, out there. People recognized us and they were aware of us. And so, there was a certain bit of notoriety, in a small portion of fame, but we were never really famous. Actually, I
Mhm.
think we were famous. It's just that nobody knows it. But depression is one of those things that, and it's still kind of awkward to talk about. I
Right.
find people that I'm a grandfather. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to prove. But I tell you, Al, there's times when I just can't. I don't feel safe to do it. And so when you and I were talking that day, I just let it rip. I was just like, I'm gonna tell you something. And it was very freeing for me to be able to tell you, man, I am battling depression like gangbusters.
Mhm.
And it wasn't my first time. It wasn't my
Mm.
first rodeo. I've had it. I've struggled with it, a good portion of my life. But when you're doing stand up and you're touring and all that stuff, there's this weird thing that happens, and you understand it. And I think any performer, I think, understands it. Primarily comics, you go out there and you lay it all out on the line, right? And you're
Mhm.
just going and you're making everybody laugh and boom, 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 boom. And then there's all this falderall and you're talking to people and engaging people. And if you're really a good comic, you like people,
Sure.
I know some comics that don't like people, and I don't particularly like their stand up because it comes across as, man, you got acid for blood, and right. So
Yeah.
but then you go to your hotel room and then you just like, okay,
Yeah.
here I am, right? And then I don't know about you, but I would like, I would have I'd have perfect set, but I'd have one joke or one thing that I didn't do just right. Man, I'm just killing myself for it. Oh, why didn't or I forgot this, I forgot that, or why didn't I do this, and it starts to play heavily on your head, and on your heart. And then I think the biggest thing is, as performers, we both profess our faith in Jesus, that, man, without him, I'm nothing.
All right.
There are those moments, when you're like, God, am I really legit? I mean, I would go, okay, God, am I really doing this for you, or am I doing this for me? Or is there a mixture? What's going on here?
Mhm.
So all of that, man, just starts spiraling down, and then if you have a propensity like I do, um, physiologically for depression, it just exacerbates the whole thing. So
Right.
yeah, it was funny how I just, yeah, I let it rip, man. And you were just like, uh-huh. And so just your acceptance of it, and then being able to be kind enough and genuine enough to say, hey man, you're not alone. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people won't do that. I've had people in the past who I've shared it with, and I knew they struggled with stuff, but oh well, I'll pray for your brother. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
wanted you to hold my hair while I throw up in the toilet,
Right. Yeah.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
depression is people don't like to talk about it. I mean, Shonda,
No.
went through it massively, and Shonda Pierce, and others have too. They don't like
Yeah.
some people don't talk about it. They're not transparent about it, but there's something therapeutic about it being where you can talk to somebody. Number one, and number two, just to know that you've got another me too type person that you're sharing with. And so when you
Mhm.
go, oh my gosh, you have that too, and it's surprising. It's almost like the pressure relief valve just sort of
Sure.
goes off and gives you oxygen. I'm not kidding
Yeah.
you.
No, that's true. It is. It's like, because when you're in that place, it's kind of hard to catch your breath.
Yeah,
You're always inhaling, but you can't seem to get enough air in you. No, that's a great. It is exactly right. It does give you oxygen, and then it also gives you comfort
right.
that you're not alone. It's comforting when someone, you know, who you love and respect and admire has it too, and they let you in on it.
Uh,
So that's
um, it's great. It is liberating. It really
yeah,
is. And that's just
really
all
is. Yeah.
back to what the scripture says about, iron sharpening iron in Ecclesiastes. And
Hmm.
also, two threads, a third one wrapped around makes the cord even stronger. So all the more
Sure.
reason, the fact that people need each other. We need each other. And a lot of times comedians, kind of isolate themselves because they don't
Hmm.
want to open up and be too funny because they're scared somebody's going to steal their jokes or something, or the material. Um, but it's really true. I had a friend of mine I went to seminary with. He told me something when he was in the military. It's so awesome. He said, I learned that two people can make up four beds in the same amount of time it takes one person to make up one bed. Is that kind of crazy? So it's just
Yeah.
that strength in numbers. And I
Right.
say that's
Yeah.
why single people always have sloppy places, because they don't they don't make their bed. It takes them too long to do anything.
Well, also too, I wonder, when you and I were talking too, because we were catching up after kind of on the heels of COVID. I think that exacerbated it I think for me anyway. I think that kind of isolation did it for me. But it's almost like now, our country went through this almost depression together,
yeah,
which some people don't know. It was their first experience with it. It was their first time feeling down, and they really didn't know what to do with it. And
hmm
I found myself talking to people who had never struggled with depression but had it, or during COVID, and that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me to realize that it is situational. That you know that collectively as a nation there was a kind of this depression that went on. So that's, whew, man, what a weird moment.
it was a setback, man. It was a setback. A lot of people went through it. I don't mind having time by myself. I like to be isolated because I like to go on a bike ride. I like to pray and think and get ideas and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I don't mind being alone. Loneliness is different than being
Right.
alone, right?
Yeah.
Um, we can experience being alone because, the only time we can really be transparent and open with God about how we're feeling is when we are like really, really out in the woods or alone. You know what I mean? Out in the woods, so to speak, but we're alone and we can be transparent with Him. And when I do that, it feels so incredible to be able to talk to God about how you're really feeling, because I bottle things up so much thinking I can kind of handle it myself. And then finally I'll get to that point where I just explode on God. And I asked myself, why didn't I do this, all along and just have a continual prayer time, prayer conversation with the Lord and letting Him know how I'm feeling. And I'm really working on that now. We don't take the time to really just stop and get away from technology a little bit and just talk and meditate on the Lord and pretend like He's there. And another thing I'll add to this just real quick is that I don't like to look at my time alone with God as being something to check off my list. That's real
Hmm.
tempting to do.
I found that too, that quiet time can become very mechanical, and it can be out of
Yes,
duty. It's a duty rather than out of devotion. It's like,
right.
oh, I'm gonna go do my devotion, and it's like, and I would find that I would have reading, and I'd be reading the scriptures, and I'm like, oh man, Come on, man, let's go. Let's go.
And this is back in the kind of the comedy realm, but you know how it is when I think comedians again can experience more depression or letdown time than anybody, because I think part of it is because of the comparison. The comparison issue that we
Hmm.
have. Like, you hear someone and you go, oh my gosh, I'm not as funny as they are, or they're knocking it out of the park, and here I am struggling.
Hmm.
And this not just in comedy, this can happen in job performance comparisons. It can be anything. So people who are watching here, don't think it's just about comedy. It's not. It's in comparison. When somebody does a better job, we start thinking, well, I've got to do something to become better so I can rise up to that level of appreciation by my peers, so I can feel better about myself. Instead of just saying, you know what, Lord, you've got me planted here.
Hmm.
Just help me not to be anxious about whether or not I'm better than they are at this particular thing. Just help me to
Sure.
be the best I can be
Yeah.
and use my talents and my skills, my abilities, because none of us are the same.
Yeah.
Um, we all have our knack and our way of seeing the car wreck on the road. You see it from this way, I'll see it from this angle over here, and
Hmm.
just appreciate each other over that, and not have to become jealous and envious,
Yeah.
which Jesus says both of those are not good, right?
Not good
Don't
for
do
you.
those. So, you've seen that, I'm sure, a ton, just like,
Yeah.
uh,
When I started out in the clubs, I remember, we were doing comedy competitions and all that kind of stuff. One of the greatest compliment I could give another comic would be, gosh, I wish I would have thought of that,
yeah.
because I love when comics just surprise me and I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have thought of
Mhm.
that. Or why didn't I think of that? But what I found is that comedy is also very subjective. And so when I started working with Christian comics, I didn't really feel that competitive thing with them, because I kind of had that worked out of me in the club setting, because club setting is cutthroat, man. And it is cutthroat. And but one of the things I learned is that comedy is subjective, because I've been in comedy competitions where I did really well. I did better than other comics, but they were funnier than me. It's just that
Mm.
the judges liked me better. Or I would have one where I just absolutely destroyed it, and this man just killed it, man. And I'm feeling really good and didn't even rank in the top five. And I'm like going, what? And that guy won,
Right.
And so what I learned was it's all about the listener. It's the person, and comics would make it about us. It's like, no, it's your audience. It's who you're trying to win over. And so when I learned that lesson, man, it set me free, because then, instead of walking onto a room full of people going, oh, these people are here to hear me. No, I'm here for them.
Yes. Yes.
If these people weren't here, there would be no need for me. And
That's
so it
right.
really shifted it really shifted my focus. So I'm like, I'm gonna serve you, and that's where it was like, I'm gonna find your funny bone out there. I'm gonna find what's funny to you. I'm gonna use my material, but I'll flavor it, or I'll change the cadence. I'll do whatever I need to do to match the room. And
Right.
so, sometimes you go into a quiet room, you can't come out with gangbusters. You come into a raucous room, you can't come in timid. You got to read the room real quick and jump in women. So, um, yeah, I remember those days of just, man, just the cutthroatness of it. It was just, I wasn't good at it. That part I wasn't good at. I was too much of a softie.
Yeah. Hey, let me point out a couple of things real quick too. First of all, real quick about the Ray Romano. It performed with. We watch
Hmm.
Raymond still to this day almost every
That's
night
hilarious.
over
Hilarious show.
supper. I mean,
Hilarious. Great guy. What a nice man. He is a nice man.
yeah. So was that a kind of an opening for him, or was it what was the
Yeah, it was
scenario?
there was the comic it was I was the house MC at my club, and so when these big names would come through, I got to open.
Awesome.
And it was his when I was with him, his twins had just been born, and he had this whole routine about working out, and he goes, it's great, and he just talked about having twin boys, and just how genuine he was, and how gracious and kind he was. And we did a thing with Jay Leno once, and
Yeah.
he, nice man. Billy did a thing with Billy Crystal in Daytona Beach one time, and he's a nice man. And it was funny, the nicest comics are the ones you expect them to be. It's like you can tell Jay Leno's really a good guy. You can
Right.
tell Ray Romero's a really good guy. I won't tell you who the jerks are because that's gossip.
What you're doing kind of now with Harbinger marketing,
Mhm.
I want to I'm going to try to edit a clip in here on one of your incredible commercials. Just in a nutshell, real quick, tell them what you do with that.
I was on a tour. I actually came home, took my wife and our oldest grandson on a short cruise, and we came back and boom, everything got locked down.
Yeah.
So every tour I had, everything was canceled. I mean, private events, everything, nothing. And so, but I still had some acting jobs, and I was doing these commercials, for this Harbinger marketing. They do outsourced marketing for all these different companies, and they needed to shoot some commercials, and some of the people on their staff knew me. And so I did a few of their commercials, and one night we had a late night shoot, and the CEO came by and was thanking everybody for being there. And I said, just offhandedly, I said, hey, if there's ever anything you think I can do for you, let me know. And he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, because I'm just sitting here blowing through my savings, and I'm not working, and I need to work.
Mhm.
So about 3 weeks later or so, he texted me and he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah. So we started talking. We talked for several weeks, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So now it's kind of funny how I've used there are two set skills that I have, which is comedy and pastoral. I really love being a pastor.
Right.
And so my role is, it's got a funny title, but it's kind of self-explanatory. I'm the strategic partnership coordinator. In other words, I look at the culture at Harbinger, who we are, what we do, but primarily who we are, and try to find other companies that have that same culture that we can help. And then I start entertaining them.
Mom said dinner will be ready in 10 minutes.
Okay, buddy, thanks. Oh, hey, Billy, can you turn the light on in here for me?
Yeah, sure. Can I get it?
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Dad? What is this light supposed to do anyway?
I have no idea.
Mom, it's doing it again. Mom, it's doing it again.
By the way, please, y'all, go to Amazon.com and get his book, Shameless. It is so good. And
Yes.
also,
And while you're there, get
And-
that one too.
Who the Pooh are you?
Who the poo are you? Who the poo are you? Yeah. It's all about relationship. This has
Right.
nothing to do with business. This is application, but this is just how to accept who you are, understand why you do what you do, and conversely, pay that out. When you receive it, you give it out. You start helping other people by understanding them,
Right.
and accepting them for who they are.
That's awesome, man. Hey, well, time is up, man. Get cut off here. I love you.
Yeah, man.
And I
Love you
look
too,
forward
dude.
to getting back with you, and let's do some more fun stuff. Okay, man?
Yes, sir.
All
See you,
right.
pal.
Love you, brother.
Love you,
Okay.
man.